soldier tightened his grip around the cold metal and whispered under his breath, "If this jams, I'm finished." The weapon in his hands didn't look like something that could save a life. It looked crude, unfinished, and dangerously simple. The metal tube was rough. The magazine stuck out from the side at an awkward angle. It even rattled slightly when he moved. This wasn't a weapon built with pride. It was built in desperation. And in 1940, desperation was exactly what Britain was facing. France had fallen. German forces were dominating Europe. The British Expeditionary Force had barely escaped from Dunkirk, leaving behind vehicles, heavy equipment, and thousands of weapons on the beaches. Soldiers returned home exhausted, and unarmed Britain suddenly faced a terrifying reality. There were not enough guns. New recruits flooded training camps, ready to defend their country. But instructors didn't have rifles to give them. Some soldiers trained with wooden sticks. Others passed around a single rifle between groups. If Germany invaded Britain at that moment, many defenders would have nothing to fight with. The situation was critical. The British Army needed weapons immediately. But traditional firearms took time. The Lee-Enfield rifle was accurate and reliable, but it required careful machining and skilled labor. Machine guns were even more complex. The American Thompson submachine gun was effective, but far too expensive for mass production. Britain didn't need perfection. Britain needed numbers, military. Planners made a bold decision. They would create a weapon that was cheap, simple, and fast to manufacture. It didn't need to look impressive. It just needed to fire. Something that could be produced in huge quantities, even in small workshops, even under constant threat of bombing. Two men were given the task, Major Reginald Shepard and Engineer Harold Turpin. Their mission was to design a submachine gun that could be built using minimal materials and simple tools. A weapon that required no complex machining, no expensive materials, and no delicate components. The result shocked everyone. The weapon looked unfinished. It used a simple metal tube as its body. The bolt was basic. The magazine was mounted on the side. There was no polished wood, no refined shape, and no elegance. It looked more like plumbing equipment than a military firearm. The name came from its creators, Shepard, Turpin, and Enfield. Sten. When soldiers first saw the Sten, many doubted it. It felt light, almost fragile. The rough construction made it seem unreliable. Some even joked that it looked like it would fall apart during combat. Others wondered how something so simple could survive battlefield conditions. But appearances can be deceiving. When tested, the Sten fired rapidly and effectively at close range. It used 9mm ammunition and produced controllable bursts. It was compact, easy to carry, and simple to operate. Even inexperienced soldiers could learn to use it quickly. Most importantly, it could be manufactured incredibly fast. Production began immediately. Large factories started building them. Then smaller workshops joined. Bicycle factories, metal shops, and small industrial plants all began producing parts. The Sten didn't require precision craftsmanship. It required speed. Thousands were produced, then tens of thousands, soon. Hundreds of thousands of Sten guns were entering service. Britain was arming itself again, but the Sten's importance went far beyond British shores. Across occupied Europe, resistance fighters were struggling. They had courage, but very few weapons. They relied on sabotage, ambushes, and surprise attacks. Often using whatever tools they could find, they needed something small, lightweight, and easy to hide. The Sten was perfect. British aircraft began dropping containers into occupied territories at night. Inside those containers were Sten guns, ammunition, and supplies. Resistance fighters in France, Poland, and Norway received them. The Sten wasn't ugly, it was hope. Farmers became fighters. Students became saboteurs. Ordinary civilians suddenly had the ability to fight back against occupying forces. The simple weapon gave them confidence. A small group with Sten guns could ambush convoys, disrupt communications, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. British commandos also adopted the Sten during raids behind enemy lines. They needed compact automatic firepower. The Sten was easy to carry and quick to deploy. Paratroopers jumped into hostile territory with it. Tank crews kept it as a backup weapon inside cramped vehicles. The Sten became the weapon of close combat, but it wasn't without flaws. Early models had reliability issues. Magazines could jam if not handled properly. Dirt and debris could interfere with operation. Soldiers had to learn correct techniques for loading and holding the weapon. Training manuals even warned troops about careful magazine handling. Despite this, troops continued to rely on it because when weapons were scarce, the Sten was available. When new recruits arrived, they received Sten guns. When resistance fighters needed arms, the Sten was dropped by parachute. When commandos planned raids, the Sten went with them. It wasn't perfect, but it was there, and in war. Being there mattered more than being perfect. By 1944, the Sten had spread across multiple battlefields. British soldiers carried it during urban fighting. Resistance groups used it during uprisings. Paratroopers used it during night operations. It became a common sight wherever British and Allied forces operated. The cheap weapon had become trusted. One veteran later described it simply, "It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't perfect. But when things got close, it worked." Over 4 million Sten guns were produced during World War II. 4 million weapons created from a design many initially doubted. 4 million chances for survival. 4 million symbols of determination. The Sten proved that simplicity can be powerful. It showed that a weapon doesn't need to be perfect to be effective. In desperate times, availability matters more than elegance. Speed matters more than appearance. The Sten wasn't built to impress, it was built. To arm soldiers quickly, it was built to give. Resistance fighters a chance it was built to defend a nation under threat. 4. Many British soldiers, commandos, and civilians turned fighters. That crude metal gun meant survival. It represented determination in the face of fear. It symbolized resilience when resources were limited. The weapon that looked cheap became the gun soldiers trusted with their lives, and in the darkest days of World War II, that was more than enough.